Good evening, everybody. And Michelle, we are delighted to welcome you here tonight to this spring gathering of Presbyterian women, and a welcome to all of the viewers who are watching by live stream. So we're very grateful to you for coming and giving us a window into your world. Now, we're sorry though that Barbara Katz, who is the coordinator of community affairs for Providence House, cannot be with us tonight due to the death of her father. I know. She's very sorry that she couldn't be here too. She and Michelle were going to come originally, but she assured me that Michelle is a pro at this and knows how to explain all the details. So speaking of details, Barbara gave me a list that you'll have to decode for us, saying Michelle Fesler, MS, MT, BC. So she has worked at the Providence House Domestic Violence Services of Catholic Charities for 14 years. She began her agency career as the music therapist, moved on to become the PALS program coordinator, which is a program for children and teenagers exposed to and witness of domestic violence. She presently serves as the Counseling Services Coordinator, overseeing both the PALS and outreach programs. Prior to moving to New Jersey, Michelle worked as a music therapist in Atlanta, Georgia, working with adolescents who have experienced sexual abuse, and as an early intervention specialist. Michelle received her master's degree in music therapy from Radnor University and gives presentations at local, state, and international conventions working on the use of music, working with survivors of domestic violence. So Michelle will take questions at the end, but I trust you will join me in a very warm welcome to Michelle Fesler. Thank you. And I was advised, no podium, no fixed microphone, no standing in one place, that Michelle likes to move around.
I don't like to stand still. I'll try not to go too crazy for the people at home. So thank you for that. MTBC stands for Music Therapist Board Certified. So those are my credentials for being a music therapist. And that pretty much covers my background there. So what I hope to do tonight for you is, so I have my phone because I don't see a clock here. Oh, right back there. Good. All right, because I don't like to have this. What's the time frame that you're looking for? 45 minutes? Tomorrow? Okay. I don't have to go into work till 12:30. It's my late day, so. Okay, because I can talk a long time. So you, okay. So you can ask me questions as we go. I am, as I'm talking, if there's something that's not clear, because there's a lot of information, and I will get on a tangent. I can get on a tangent by myself because of this information, but that's why I have my little cheat sheet here, because what I want to do, we're going to start off, we're going to define domestic violence. I'm going to talk about what it is, what it isn't. We're going to talk about warning signs, red flags, and how if you come across someone in your life that is a victim of DV, what you can do to help them. And then I'm going to talk about the stuff that Barb was going to share, going over our services, what Providence House does, what we offer to survivors, and then how you can help with donations. So that's the plan for what I'm going to share tonight. So it's not going to cover everything, but again, if you have a question, please just let me know. So the first thing I like to do is start off by defining domestic violence. When you hear that term, domestic violence or intimate partner violence, those two terms are interchangeable. What do you think of? What comes to mind? Physical violence, yep. What else? Emotional. Verbal. Anything else? Sexual, absolutely. Intimidation, yep. Financial dependence, financial abuse is one of those. So yes, those things, physical, verbal, emotional, sexual, financial, all of those are types of DV. You don't have to experience all of them. You can have physical violence. You don't have to have physical violence to be in a domestic violence relationship. That can oftentimes be harder for a survivor to acknowledge, because if I'm being hit by my partner, right, I know that that's not okay. But if something more subtle is happening and I'm being put down or called names and I'm not being touched, it's sometimes harder to recognize. So one of the things that I have that I'll pass out later, you actually don't need it while I'm talking, but it's the power and control wheel. Physical violence, sexual violence, those we understand, but it's some of those intimidation factors that might not come to the forefront when we're thinking of it. So an abuser doesn't actually have to say anything to intimidate their partner. Right? They don't have to put them down. It's all of these small things that add up to this bigger picture. So it could just be a look. It could be actually putting their arm on the back, right? Or just on the side. They're not actually grabbing them, right? So oftentimes, often, not always, an abuser isn't necessarily going to show themselves to the rest of the world, because it's very hard when survivors open up to friends and family. Oftentimes friends and family come back and say, oh my gosh, are you sure? Like, I never saw that behavior. And that's intentional, right? Because they're hiding that. That's why we call this thing behind closed doors, right? DV was this thing that was never talked about. It was a problem at home. It wasn't talked about in friends or family. It wasn't talked about at church. It wasn't talked about at work. It wasn't talked about. It was hidden, partly because of the embarrassment, that survivors might feel. There might be threats that if you tell anybody, I'm going to harm you, I'm going to harm the children. So there's a very real fear there. So when they're out with family and friends, they might be across the room. Their partner knows, I know what that look means. But to anybody else that's just at that party or that gathering, oh, they just look so attentive. They're coming up, they're checking in, they're, putting their arm around them. It's so loving. But really, that's an indirect threat. That's like, I don't want you talking to this person. I need you over here, right? So I'm going to keep you close. It is. And actually, thank you for bringing that up, because some of the things that DV is not, at the end of the day, if you take nothing else with you from my talk and my being here, domestic violence is about power and control. Nothing else. It's about exerting power and control over an intimate partner. Some misnomers that are out there. It's not an anger management problem. And what I just described, right? If I have an anger management issue, I'm not going to be able to control myself if I'm in front of friends and family. I'm going to just blow up, right? And one of the other things that happens is there's a lot of that manipulation. So if I have anger management issues, if I'm blowing up in the house, I'm ripping stuff down, I'm tearing stuff down, I don't care whose it is. But what an abuser is going to do, they're going to target their partner's possessions, right? And so when you're in that moment and you're in fight or flight, you might not be acknowledging or recognizing that, but when I'm sitting in groups and I'm talking to these women that are there, and I say, think about, what did he destroy? It was your stuff. It was your mementos that you can't get back. It was your pictures. It was your diploma. It was your kids' artwork. It's your stuff. And when they stop and they think, they're like, you're right. He didn't touch his TV. He didn't touch his gaming system of the moment, right? He wasn't destroying any of his stuff. His clothes are intact. Mine are all cut to shreds and thrown out. All of my stuff, none of his. That's not an anger management issue. That is someone that is very much in control of what they're doing. Now, when I said not all, because there are some abusers that all bets are off and they kind of let their true colors show, and we see them in court. They yell at the judges because they don't like to be told what to do. And so they kind of show themselves, which is good for the survivor because the judge can see it. Because think about it. If a survivor comes out to their friends and family and says, I'm being abused, and that person hasn't seen it, sometimes they have a hard time believing it. Well, you don't have any bruises. I haven't seen any broken bones. I haven't seen, you've never said anything bad about them. Survivors protect their abusers. especially if there's children involved. And so it's hard. If we don't see it with our own eyes, sometimes it's hard to believe. So it's not about anger management. That's why anger management classes don't work, because if it did, we could send them all to anger management, or the ones that go to anger management, it would be fine and it would be fixed. What they actually need is a batterer's intervention program. It's a 9 to 12 month program where they go weekly, because it's really about reframing their thought process. Abusers' behaviors do not come about because of their experiences with other women. It's because of their experiences with other men and how they're taught to view women and men roles, right? So, yeah. Because again, they might say, well, I had these horrible girlfriends, my past relationships, they were just horrible. And these are warning signs too. See how I'm jumping around already? So if a current partner or dating partner or spouse is talking about previous relationships and it's all their fault, everything was the other person's fault. Well, my last wife did this, and my last girlfriend did this, and she just made me so mad, and she did X, Y, and Z, and I didn't like it, and all these things. And they don't say anything positive. Like, breakups, okay, you can have a bad breakup, but not where you're constantly putting that other person down and saying everything was their fault and never taking accountability. So I'm going to get myself off track, too. So that's a warning sign, and that's where a survivor, this is how someone can easily get into an abusive relationship, because you're in it before you realize it. And you've already gone through a couple cycles of DV before you're like, now what do I do? I'm here. So they think, oh, I'm not like these other women. I'm not like those things that they're talking about. I don't do those things. I'm going to love them more. I'm going to love them better. I'm going to be the better woman. I'm going to be the better wife, the better partner. I'm going to make them see. And in the beginning, it might be okay. There's a honeymoon period. But eventually, because they're abusive, because they want that power and control, it doesn't matter. It really actually doesn't matter what the behavior of the survivor is, because it's never about those things that the partner's trying to control. And so what ends up happening is a survivor starts to lose their self. They start to lose who they are as a person, because they are constantly trying to change themselves to fit into this box of what the abuser is saying. So he came home from work, he didn't like the dinner, so I'm going to make his favorite dinner every night. Okay, I switched that. Guess what? There's going to be another fight. The kids are too loud. The dog was too loud. There was messes in the house. It wasn't clean. He didn't like the outfit I was wearing. I changed all of those things. So now I have no identity, and I can ask a survivor, what's your favorite color? Sometimes they don't know, right? Because they're not allowed to have opinions, because it doesn't matter. They can say the sky is blue, it doesn't matter. Sky is green, whatever color they want it to be. Because it's not about those things, right? So this is why I'm going back, it's not about anger management. Another thing that it's not is it's not a drug and alcohol problem. So drugs and alcohol can make DV worse. It can escalate situations. But there's plenty of people that use substances that don't become violent when they're using. There are some people that do become violent when they're using, but they're also not DV abusers, because remember that power and control. That behavior, that coercive control, is present even without those substances, and that's what you're looking for. Is this just a violent person, someone that becomes violent when they're using, or is there that piece of coercive control under what they're doing? And again, survivors want answers. They want to try to understand and be able to explain that behavior. So sometimes they'll say, well, oh, he only does this when he's drinking, or he only does that when he's using X, Y, or Z substance. But then when you peel back those layers and you say, well, is it really just then? And they think back, and it's some of these other manipulations that happen. Well, no, he was really always blaming me for everything. It just was worse when he was drinking, right? So that's the power and control piece. So it's not about drugs and alcohol. It's also not a mental health issue. You can have an abuser that has a mental health diagnosis, and those two things can be mutually exclusive. Mental health does not create someone to be controlling, and also there's plenty of people walking around that have a mental health diagnosis that are not abusive to their partners. Again, it can escalate. It can make a situation worse depending on the diagnosis that they have. You can have someone that might have a bipolar with manic depression, right? So in their mania episodes, they might start trashing the house or, becoming more physically violent, but they don't have that control piece, right? If you're talking about DV, that control piece is there. So that's what you want to pay attention to.
Michelle, you say DV every once in a while. So slur it, that's domestic violence.
DV is domestic violence. Yes, I shorten it for you. So yeah, DV is domestic violence. There also is no such thing as co-abuse or mutual abuse when we're talking about DV, because I just said it's about power and control, right? So you have to have one partner that has more control and more power in that relationship. Abusers will like to blame their partner. In fact, they do blame their partner for the abuse. And they'll say, oh, you're hurting me too. You're the abuser. You're the aggressor. A survivor might actually use violence against their partner. It does not make them the aggressor. It does not make them the abusive partner. We call that reactive violence. So if I'm being abused by my partner, day in, day out, month after month after month, 10 years, eventually I might get tired of it and I might fight back, right? It doesn't make me the aggressor. I'm not now trying to control my partner. I just want the abuse to stop, right? But if that happens, the abuser might say, well, she's abusing me too. It's co-abuse. It's mutual abuse. I can't have equal footing with an abuser, right? If you have two people that are just violent towards each other, again, and there's no control, that's just a violent, toxic relationship. That's not DV. There's that control piece with these relationships. Another reason a survivor might actually use violence, so this I think is in one of the brochures. There's a cycle of violence. You might have that honeymoon phase that I mentioned earlier, or starts walking on eggshells, right? And survivor after survivor after survivor, in all the years that I've been doing this, that is the phrase that they use. It feels like they're walking on eggshells around their partner. They never know what's gonna set them off. Because again, they can predict them better than anybody, but it's never about, it's about the dog, it's about the food, it's about these small things, right, that shouldn't be a blow up. So they're walking on eggshells. That's leading to a violent incident. They know that something's going to happen. So if I'm walking on eggshells, and there's no specific time frame, like not everybody's going to go through the same amount of time. Somebody might be in a tension building phase for like a day or two. Somebody else might be in it for a month or two, right? So if I'm just constantly on edge and I don't know what's going to happen, I might actually instigate or start something because I want to get that violent incident over with. Now, am I consciously thinking that? No. Survivors aren't sitting there going, I'm going to pick a fight because I want him to hit me, because I want to go back to this honeymoon phase so I can stop walking on eggshells. They just do it because I know something's coming, so I just want to get it over with. So I might go up and slap my partner. I might create a fight, right? Put my hands on them or whatever, or just verbally go after them because I want that blow up to happen. And then whatever that looks like, that takes place, and then I can go back into this honeymoon phase or the hearts and flowers stage. Not every survivor gets this one. This is the one where they might come back and say, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again, yada, yada, yada. They don't mean it, it's not a real apology. Because again, if you listen to the words that they're using, it's, I'm sorry that you make me so mad when you do X, Y, and Z. That's not a real apology. If I have to blame somebody else in my apology, that's not an apology. Apology is taking accountability for what I'm doing. And that's one thing that abusers never do. That's another warning sign. So those are some reasons a survivor might actually become aggressive in the relationship. It does not make them the controlling partner. It doesn't. It's reactive violence. So, warning signs. Let's just kind of start with that for a minute. So abusers, a huge warning sign for an abuser is they don't take responsibility for any of their behaviors. And I don't, like, no matter how big, no matter how small, they don't take any type of responsibility. It's you. Well, my boss did this. Well, the teacher did that. Well, the dog did this. The cat. I'm a cat person. I don't know why I keep using a dog as a reference tonight, but like, it's everybody else's fault. It's my parents' fault, my kid's fault, my spouse's fault. And I mean, no matter how small. You didn't take the trash out? Well, something, blah, whatever. The cat tripped me and I couldn't, right? Like something small. I'm sorry, honey, I'll take it out now, right? It's always blaming everybody else. That's a huge warning sign. Jealousy is another huge warning sign. Jealousy is not cute. It's not attractive. In early stages of a relationship, there might be some subtle jealous signs that can lead to isolation, where Oh, honey, I just thought we could spend the weekend together. Why do you have to go out with your friends? I'm not being mean about it. And right, this is a new relationship. I want to spend time with my partner. I want to be liked. I want to be loved. I want to have that closeness. Okay, you're right. I'll cancel my plans. I'll stay with you. Till it increases, right? Next time, why do you have to go see your family? I don't want to go spend time with them. I'm staying home. Okay, well, I'm still going to go. Blah, blah, blah. I go, but now my phone's blowing up. I'm getting text after text after text after text, phone call, phone call, phone call. You'd be amazed. I don't know how some of these people have full-time jobs. I really don't. Blowing up a phone, 500 text messages in 30 minutes, phone call after phone call after phone call, not leaving a voicemail, smart enough to not sometimes put it into words because now I've got evidence, right, and proof that they threatened me. So they just keep calling repeatedly. Now, I'm not allowed to go. I'm actually being told I can't go see my friends and family, right? So again, you see it's that slippery slope. So it starts small. So I'm in the beginning of this relationship where now 2 months in, I'm now isolated from my friends and family, and I didn't even realize that it was happening because it was slowly over time. And it might even be to the point I might have a partner that actually doesn't forbid me, but makes it so impossible to go and do those things and enjoy it that I'm choosing not to because it's easier. Because if I go, I know that there's going to be a fight when I come home or a physical altercation. So I'm just not going to go. Now, he didn't tell me I couldn't go. And so then when that fight happens, well, I never told you that you couldn't go see your family or friends, right? You see how that happens? So now I start to question myself. Well, he's right. He didn't tell me I couldn't go see my friends. You're right. And now I'm apologizing to him. The heck just happened? He has me questioning myself for his behavior. That's the manipulation. That's that power and control. So gaslighting, right? When someone is trying to tell someone that your version of reality didn't happen. So them telling me, I didn't hit you. Like flat out just lying. I might have a bruise, right? I didn't hit you. You're not remembering that correctly. I'm not abusing you. Or if it's just verbal and emotional, I don't hit you. You're not abused. I don't put my hands on you. So I'm questioning, I'm doubting my reality. That's gaslighting, right? Survivors come to us. A lot of what it is just decompressing and processing and allowing them and validating and saying, no, what you experienced was abuse. That's DV. That's domestic violence. That's not okay. The only person that is at fault for domestic violence is the abuser. I don't care what you did to him. I don't care if you hit him. I don't care if you put your hands on him. I don't care if you yelled at him. I don't care. They are the ones responsible for their behavior, not you. Survivors will also say, well, if I just did this and I should have done that, and if I had just... No, because we can't control somebody else. I can only control myself. I can only control my behavior. If I want to change something, I have to want to change it. This is why it's very hard for an abuser to change. Because I just said that they blame everybody else for their behavior. For me to make that change, I have to take that responsibility and accept that I'm doing something that's not okay. And because I'm not doing that and I'm blaming everybody else in front of me, how likely am I going to change? Not very likely. I have friends that tell me I'm too sarcastic. I don't want to change that, so I'm not going to, right? Like, I have to want to change that about myself. And that's something just a little benign. I know when not to use it, it's fine. So it makes it really difficult. So on the back, there's some more warning signs that I will pass these out and let you take with you. Jumping too soon into a relationship. Saying I love you too quickly. Huge warning sign. When I talk to teenagers, they like to ask, well, how quick is too quick? I can't tell you how quick is too quick. I know 2 days is too quick. I know a month is too quick. But everybody has their own timeline. But if you just met someone and they're saying, I love you, I can't live without you, Now, in the beginning, we all want to be loved, right? We all want to be accepted. We all want to be liked for who we are. And if I have lower self-esteem, if I don't have a great family life, if I'm not getting that anywhere else in my life, I might latch on to this because someone's telling me I'm attractive, they like spending time with me, they love me. Trying to move in together too quick, right? Any of those things, that's a warning sign. And one of the, for those that want to do any more reading on this, there's a gentleman named Lundy Bancroft, and he's done work with survivors and abusers for many, many years, and he has multiple books out there. And he talks about, he actually has a section in one of his talks that he talks about warning signs. Pushing through boundaries is another one, especially on the guise of being helpful. And he uses the example of you're in a new relationship and the guy offers to come over and shovel your driveway, and you tell him, no, I don't need you to come shovel my driveway, I don't want you to. And they come and do it anyway, and then get mad when you don't thank them. I just set a boundary, and it doesn't matter how big or how small, and you actually want to pay attention to those small boundaries, something like that. If they're gonna blow past the small ones, they're gonna just smash the big boundaries, right? So someone that doesn't respect your boundaries, huge, 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 huge warning sign. So jealousy, boundaries, saying I love you too quickly, getting, he also talks about like why that can be attractive in the beginning too, especially for women if you're talking about a female-male relationship where female's the survivor, male's the abuser, because it can be hard to find men that want to commit. So if one is showing you like, hey, I want to get married, I want to move in together, you might be like, yay, but I have only known you a week. Don't do it. That's too soon. A week is too soon. And it's not just one of these things by itself, right? So oftentimes, again, survivors, they come in and they go through, so we talk about these topics. We have one group that's just warning signs, one group is just power and control. And then they start to see warning signs everywhere, and that's normal to pull back and say like, oh, that one's got like 5 warning signs, there's a red flag over here. And red flags and warning signs, those are used interchangeably too. And now they're seeing all kinds of red flags. And it's normal because they're trying to, ascertain what's real and what's not, because my whole life that I just had is a complete lie and not what I thought it was. I thought we were in a happy, healthy relationship. They're trying to approach it as a healthy partner, but you can't rationalize with an irrational person. You just can't. So, okay, let me see. Are there any questions yet?
How would somebody come to you?
Okay, hold that one. I'll get to that in a second. Yes. Yes. Oh gosh, yes. High school is actually too late to start talking to them about domestic violence. So, yes. We need to be talking to the kids in elementary school. Because if they're growing up in a home where they're seeing this happen, they're going to repeat those patterns unless they're told that that's not okay. What do you mean?
Don't they become victims too?
They can become a victim and or an abuser. So we know statistically speaking, it doesn't mean that they will, because we do have a children's program, and I'll talk about our programs in a minute. The highest rate of DV happens in 16 to 24-year-olds. That's what we see. That's the statistic that's out there right now. Like, that's the biggest 16 to 24-year-olds, so high school, college. It can happen to anybody at any age, no matter where you live, no matter what you do, no matter how much money you make or don't make, whatever your ethnicity. It happens everywhere. We provide DV services for the entire Burlington County, and I can tell you we have clients that come from every municipality in this county, have reached out for services at some point in time. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 4, that's 25%, of the female population is going to experience some type of DV at some point in her life. That's a lot. That stat hasn't changed since they started running these stats back in the 70s and 80s. 1 in 4. So So that's why I say we need to start talking about it younger, because these kids are experiencing it. These kids are already living in these homes. So it's not like we're talking about something that they don't know or understand. And so when I started dating, and I've got 11 and 12-year-olds saying that they're dating, right? If my only experience of what a relationship is was abusive, we learn from our family of origin. I learn from whoever's raising me. That's how I learn how to be a young woman or a young man. And if that role model is either abusing their partner or being victimized by their partner, I'm learning as a young girl that that's how I should be treated by a partner. So when I start to be called names, I think it's normal. It's been normalized for me my entire life.
How does the child get to talk to somebody without, with his parents' permission?
So, okay, so let's jump into services. So we have the PALS program is our children's program that stands for Peace, a Learned Solution. And we offer all creative arts therapies for the kids, hence how I got started with them 14 years ago. We see as young as 3, and we only start at 3 because we need them to be potty trained before they come for services. I could work with infants. I could work with kids can be affected when mom's pregnant. So if I'm pregnant and I'm being abused and I'm in fight or flight and my body's being constantly stressed, my baby's being stressed, right? As an infant, mom's holding the infant or trying to breastfeed, and dad's coming over assaulting her while she's holding the baby, right? A child the children are also used as part of the abuse. A child, an infant's crying in the crib. The abuser doesn't let mom go pick up and soothe the child. So now we've got attachment issues early on. So this affects birth on up, right? We think if a child can't talk that they haven't been affected. They just don't have language yet to tell us how they've been affected. We know birth to 3 is some of the most crucial times for kids. So if I'm in this environment, even if I don't see it, even if I'm not witnessing it, but I can feel the tension, remember those walking on eggshells? I can feel the tension. If I see aftermath, I might have been at school, but I come home and I see mom has bruises or is bloodied. I see the house a wreck. Something happened when I wasn't there, I don't know. Now I'm in elementary school, you might see kids that look like they have ADHD or ADD, because I think they took the H out. I don't know why. They'll put it back in a couple of years. That's what they do. But it's really trauma. So if I'm at school trying to pay attention and the teacher's telling me about math, and I know yesterday when I went home, mom had bruises and there was blood everywhere, am I paying attention to a math lesson? Nope. Do I look like I have ADD? Yup. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just putting that out there as a disclaimer. I'm a music therapist, but this is just from years of doing this work and seeing. And if I treat that child for trauma and those symptoms go away, they don't have ADD, they have trauma symptoms. And that's what happens. So we don't see things. And again, because if I don't know that there's something going on at home, I might not know how to help that child best. So the PALS program, the kids that come to us, the parent is coming for services. So we provide services to any survivor of DV. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter. As long as you identify as a survivor of domestic violence, you can get services with us. So you get connected by calling our hotline. So there's some palm cards over there, too, that have our hotline number on it. They also have the counseling center number. If it's a first-time client, they have to call that hotline number. So the hotline is 24/7. 365 days, you're actually going to get a live person. That doesn't happen a lot when you call numbers anymore, but you will get a live human when you call us. That is if they want to schedule an intake to come into the counseling center. That is the number they call if someone needs shelter, safe housing. That's someone that calls if they want resources. Friends and family sometimes call to get resources. During the day, it's a lot of businesses calling us to get information. That's the hotline. So someone that's not going to shelter, that just wants to come to the counseling center, they get set up with an intake appointment. They come to our counseling center, which is located in West Hampton, and their first meeting is an intake where we're just getting some background, basic information to get them set up with services. Now, for the kids to be involved, the non-offending parent has to be doing their own work. So they do that intake, and then we set them up with what we call the domestic violence education group first. That's 8 topics. Like I mentioned, 2 of them. We have power and control. We talk about warning signs, effects of DV, and we also talk about self-esteem, healthy relationships, self-care. Survivors are often some of the most giving people that I've met. And they also work in a lot of the helping professions. Because I will take care of everybody else before I take care of myself. Also a parent, right? Moms do this a lot, give and give and give, and take care of themselves last. But we work, they're often told too, right? Part of the abuse. You're selfish if you want to do anything for yourself. It's selfish of you to leave the kids at home. Abusers aren't good parents, by the way, either. You cannot be a good parent and abuse your partner. You just can't. Survivors will often defend, though. They'll separate and they'll say, well, he harmed me, but he was a good dad. Was he? I don't think so. But it's rationalization, right? You compartmentalize, you rationalize. You're trying to make it be less, right? More easier to handle for yourself until you can get to that point where you can kind of look at it all. I usually wait a couple weeks before I spring that one on them in group, because that's usually then they go, oh, you're right. You're right. So once someone starts the DV education group, then if they have children 3 to 12, so it's traditionally 3 to 12, but we will see teens. We don't turn anybody away. We have a separate case manager that calls the parent and does a screening for the PALS program. So the PALS program is slightly different than all of our other programs because it's not crisis intervention. Pretty much everything else we do is crisis-based. PALS, they are supposed to be violence-free. Now, if the abuser is anywhere in that child's life, there's some form of violence still happening. It just looks different. So it usually means that they can't be living together with that person anymore. So if there is a separation, now they start to use the children, visitations, the manipulation changes. They might not show up for pickup, for drop-off, because they're messing with her schedule. Because at the end of the day, I just want to control my partner. I don't actually really care about the kids. I know she had plans, so I'm not going to pick them up this weekend for my visit. Now she has to cancel her plans. Or I know she wants to pick him up because she wants to take him out to dinner to see her family. I'm not going to drop him off on time. See? Manipulations. So once they get enrolled into PALS, the kids get individual and they get group because peer support is just as important. So they're either going to get the art therapy or the music therapy, and then they'll get, their groups are based on their ages. And we just started groups up again from COVID. We had gone about 2 years without groups for the kids, but they had individual. They were still doing that one-on-one. We've been open this whole time. We've been in person this whole time. There was about maybe 6 months in the beginning of 2020 where we stopped everything and everything was by phone. But we were back as soon as we could to get them back in there. Why? Because I'm trying to break down that isolation. Everybody went remote. Abusers were now working at home. When the state was shut down, I couldn't get out of the house, right? She can't escape. She can't say, I have to go to the doctor's office or I have to go to the grocery store or wherever, because the governor said you can't. So she really didn't have an out, right? So we saw an increase in DV. They didn't come out right away because they had to wait. So we actually saw a little bit of a decrease in our intakes because I can't make a phone call if he's in the house. So we tried to get back in person as quick as we could because we need them to have a place that they can come. For some survivors coming to the counseling center, all of our facilities are locked. You can't just walk into our counseling center. You have to get buzzed in. They walk through that threshold and they know they can relax because everybody there is for the same thing. No two survivor is going to have the same experience. No two survivors are going to respond or react to the trauma the same way, but there's a common bond, right? And you hear them talk in group, and literally I'll have people say sometimes, are we married to the same person? Like, and trust me, like literally, it's nothing new. I'm like, yep, it's the same controlling behavior. It's just a different body that it's in. Yes. I'd be a millionaire if I knew that. She asked, what is it in the person that's controlling that causes the control? So they might have had their own trauma growing up. They might have grown up in a home where they watched dad abuse mom, so it's a learned behavior, right? And they weren't able to unlearn it. As I mentioned before, men's attitudes towards women are from other men. So if there's a lot of toxic masculinity and they're just whatever they're going to say about women or women's places in the home or whatever, all of these things or whatever their ideas are of women, it comes from that. It comes from those places. So it's a whole construct and a way of thinking. So I have to unlearn all of that. Trauma, again, doesn't excuse it because there's plenty of people that have their own trauma that don't go on to abuse other people. But the biggest difference, so I am a therapist and I wholeheartedly believe in therapy, that we all can benefit from that. But the biggest defining factor for kids and helping them overcome this is having one positive adult role model. It can be a therapist, it can be a parent, it can be a friend's parent, it can be a teacher, a coach, someone at church. Just one positive adult that's saying, that's not okay. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not how you deserve to be treated. That's not how you treat other people. And it's also not calling out that behavior at a very young age. So when we see young kids start to repeat those patterns and start to have that control and they're not called out on it, I can get away with it, right? And that's the challenge that we have. Abusers are able to get away with a lot because the law only goes so far. If they're not held accountable in the court, there are times I've seen folks go for a restraining order, and in my mind, I'm like, there's no way that she's not going to get that restraining order. And it's not granted. Because you're dealing with human beings, right, in all these systems. Judges are human. They have bad days. They make bad calls sometimes, unfortunately, and we train them. So the same with police officers. Now, just a few other statistics. When a survivor is getting ready to leave an abusive relationship, they're 75% more likely to be killed. It is the most dangerous time because I mentioned it's about power and control, right? And if I'm now standing up for myself and saying, I don't deserve to take this anymore, I'm going to leave you, they start to spiral. They might start to escalate because I'm losing that control. So I'm going to do whatever I can to keep that control. We've actually had 2 murders in Burlington County recently that were DV. They don't call them that necessarily in the news, but if you see a murder-suicide and they knew each other, most likely it's domestic violence. Or it's often revealed later that it's a dating partner, an ex-dating partner. Recently, I think they both were within the last month. It happens everywhere. Yeah. No, it's not, but disproportionately, yes, they are. We do have some male survivors that come that it's a female abuser. There is a higher percentage of just it being the male abuser, no matter who the victim is. It could be a female or a male survivor. But yes, there actually was a case a few years ago where, that was 2 women. A woman killed her partner in Mount Holly, and that was a DV relationship. Yeah, that was a couple years ago. They were both women, but yes, we've seen male survivors come in, and it's a female partner that's abusive to them. It looks different. Often male survivors, not always, but often, they have different resources. We mentioned that financial abuse earlier. It's a way to control. In a healthy relationship, I might have wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and my partner said, sure, honey, I'll take care of it. You stay at home and you take care of the kids, and I'll go out and I'll make the money and I'll take care of everything. Well, as I'm thinking we're deciding this as a couple, as a healthy relationship, and what he just did was cut off all financial access for me and isolated me. So I don't even now have a job to go to where someone's laying eyes on me or I can ask for help if I want to. And now I don't have access to the debit card, the credit card. It gives me an allowance, but not enough to actually buy groceries, and tracks all my spending. Where am I going to go? Especially in New Jersey. It's one of the most expensive states. And now if I have kids, I can't afford rent. So I stay, because at least there's a roof over my head, food and clothing for the kids. Yeah.
I'm curious, are the women, all the women who show up on the doorstep committed to leaving a relationship?
So another fun statistic, it takes on average 7 times to leave in order to actually leave and stay away.
They might come to you,
Yep.
take advantage of your services,
Mm-hmm.
then turn around and go back.
Yep.
Michelle, for the
Yeah.
sake of our live stream audience, could you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. Thank you. If I can remember. So the question was, if folks come to us for services, do they stay gone, basically, or do they go back? And that's the stat, that it takes on average 7 times. Because, right, so if I left, and remember, we just now learned that it's the most dangerous time. And if I'm a mom and I have children, I'm going to take the kids, I'm going to hurt the kids, I'm going to hurt anybody that you care about, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to kill myself. They will threaten self-harm. And because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. And if you have a relationship, even if there has never been physical violence at all, there is no guarantee that they won't turn physically violent. You can't use that as a predictor. Now, we also know that if they have access to weapons, that increases the likelihood for lethality. Right? So that's one of our questions. Does he have access to guns or knives? I am using pronouns very specifically. Female victim, male survivor. I mean, male abuser, right? Because this is what we see. It's a health risk to women in this country.
Do you think that COVID made it worse?
Yes. 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 Sorry, thank you. Sorry, people at home. Did COVID make it worse? Yes, it did, for some of those reasons, right? It created isolation for all of us, right? And so for some of, I'm an introvert. I like my alone time. It didn't change my life too much. So, but it still affected me, right? The good thing was I was able to go to work. We couldn't do remote work because of what we do. But yes, isolating people, having that abuser now be at home all the time, stresses, right? We're seeing it in the world, in our country, right? Just increase in violence in general. And so, yes, it did. And, you know, there are times that our intake schedule is filled for weeks out. And then there's dips, right? Ebbs and flows like anything else, where it's not as full, or people's schedule. And they do that too with intake. It's not, so like we will, and I'm jumping back to your last question about leaving. Like we do have people that come to the safe house and leave our safe house and go back to the abuser. And for us, we're just there. It's not my job to judge. It's not my job to, I actually cannot tell a survivor what to do, because I actually might be putting her in more danger. Because if I say leave, I might get her killed. All I can do is help you safety plan. I can go through all the options that you have, and then that survivor has to decide what's best for them. And sometimes it's best going back. So they can come to us as often as they need. There's no limit on how many times they can come to the safe house and utilize that.
What is your capacity? Do you house all of these survivors in your facility? Or place them in hotels or?
That is an excellent question that I'm now going to repeat on my own. What's the capacity for our housing? So it's changed since COVID. Before COVID, our safe house, it's a large house, and it could hold 27 women and children at any given time. When we had male survivors call, we always put them up in a hotel because our facility wasn't set up for mixed genders for adults. and teens could come up until 18. So we had a teen room on the main floor because some 17-year-old boys look like full-grown men, right? So just to keep the trauma and the triggers for everybody, we had them on a separate level. But with COVID, we now use hotels as well. So we still have the house and we have hotels, and that has increased. And this is actually getting me to some of what Barb wanted me to share, that our numbers have drastically increased because of how we can house now. At our highest in COVID, we were up at 100 people in hotels and the safe house. Now, I think we're down to about 65 right now, which is a lot. So we went from only ever being able to have 27, and there were times we were full, but we weren't always full, to now having, we're never gonna go back to just 27, yeah. No, no, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So their funding changed, funding streams were different, and there for a while, like we have a screening process to get into the safe house, but with COVID, anybody could call and say, I experienced DV, and we had to put them up to get them out of those situations, right? So, yeah.
So, is there can you give us a ballpark per person, what a daily cost might be?
Oh, that's a great question, and I know Barb has that information somewhere. So she asked what a cost per person would be. So I can tell you, we used to have this breakdown years ago too, like how much it would cost to house somebody or feed him. So if you think a hotel room for a night will average 80. I don't even know if that's high or low, but $80. So they're still part of our program, so we give them food. So we're putting bags of food together, depending on how many kids they have, right? If they don't have clothing. So some people come to us with nothing, but some people do have the ability to pack some stuff before they come. Now, they also can't bring a lot with them when they come to us. If you're in the house, they can only bring one bag per person. So think about that too. And with children, they literally are leaving everything at home and coming to us. They can't bring their PS5, they can't bring their gaming systems, they can't bring like maybe a stuffed animal, and we try to give them as much as we can, but it's communal living. So you have people that are traumatized in communal living. They have their own bedrooms. We did start doing one family per bedroom, but before, when it was fully 27, we had multiple families in a room, and then shared spaces. We have a children's playroom, there's a kitchen, a dining room. We have a large backyard. It's actually very nice. Lots of play sets for the kids to climb on, and because we try to keep things as normal as possible in an extremely a normal situation. So sometimes just being away from their things, they want to go home, and so they do, right? Because that's what's familiar, even though it's abusive. So the Safe House, we're actually a short-term program. This also changed a little bit with COVID. So we're designed to be a 30-day stay. So you come to us, you're working the program, you're working with a case manager and advocate to try to figure out, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back? Because that might be an option for me. Do I want to go back? Do I want to try to find housing? And then it's getting them set up with the Board of Social Services and having them go to those appointments and try to find housing. So housing is extremely hard now because of COVID. Great. Now we talked about that financial abuse. So my credit score is tanked, right? So do you see all these barriers? There's barrier upon barrier upon barrier. That's why I go back. This is why I'm going back the third time, the fourth time. Because I can't afford, nobody's going to give me an apartment because my credit score is 500 or whatever. I think we were trying to help survivors just even last year, and I think it was like you needed 650 or above before they'd even look at you for a credit score. Not many survivors have a credit score of 650. He might have opened credit cards in her name without her knowledge, all of this stuff, yeah. So, okay, what happens after 30 days? We're not just putting people out on the street. So if they have a plan, if they've been working on housing, we'll give extensions. They just ask their advocate for an extension. And I mean, with COVID, we had people with us 9 months, 12 months, because we weren't just turning people out. And housing just wasn't a thing. Because with the eviction moratorium, nobody was getting evicted, so there weren't apartments to go to. So, you know, yeah.
What happens when they go back? I mean, they do the 30-day
Well, so the question was what happens when they go back. They don't always go back. I mean, so sometimes when they come to us, they do go out on their own, and they're not going back because they don't want to go back. And if they don't want to go back, we're going to help them figure out how not to do that. And they're harassing them, so they want them back so that they can control them. So they're going to get punished more, I can tell you that, because they left. How dare you leave, right? So the violence might escalate. But our goal is really just to help and support the survivor in whatever they want to do, and their choices, and supporting those choices and decisions. So the safe house, so that's for people that are in danger. They are in fear of their lives. They call us. They need to get out. Some are getting out quick in that Lifetime made-for-TV movie, right, where you see they're leaving in the middle of the night, or they're at the police station and the police are bringing them over and they literally only have what's the clothes that they're wearing. That does happen. It's not every day. It's not all the time. So like I said, sometimes their safety plan he went to work, so I was able to pack a bag and got the kids, and we were able to drive, and get there with planning. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the safe house. In the counseling center, I'm jumping around again, I'm sorry. I talked about how the adults get connected to us, so they do the DV Ed. We also do an open support group, which is a therapeutic-based group, and it's more client-led, and that's led by a clinician. The DV Ed, a case manager can run that because it's topic-based. They can also do individual, but it's case by case. I just hired somebody. I had 0 staff for a minute, so I'm actually running all the groups right now, because we have like 1/3 of our positions open right now. So that changed with COVID too. But we keep all the services are going. Nothing has stopped for clients, even without having positions filled. So they can do that. We do intensive case management. There is the children's program that I mentioned. The children's program is 6 months long. So they get group and individual. It doesn't sound like a long time, but it can be a long time. They graduated at 6 months, but there are times that we might extend that. Like right now, there's a couple cases that there's a divorce that's going to happen right around the time that the kids are supposed to leave. Visitation is going to get changed, so we're going to keep them a little bit longer to help them with that transition. Okay. I was just going to say, we also have, domestic violence advocates in the courthouse in Mount Holly. They are not lawyers. They are there just to help people that are filing for restraining orders. We have 2 full-time staff doing that. That's how many restraining orders are filed in Burlington County. Yeah.
Have you ever had an elderly person who's being abused by their adult children?
Yes. The question was, do we ever have an elderly person that's being abused by their adult children? Yes. I just helped someone move across country last year because it was her adult child that was abusing her. Yep. And we had funding. So COVID, a lot of bad things. We did get some different funding streams that happened because of COVID, and that was one of them that allowed us to move her cross country.
So are you going to talk at all about music therapy and how that factors, or is that another topic?
That could be a whole nother topic, but I will talk about music therapy as much as you want. So the reason, that's actually a good question. So if I was going to talk about music therapy, the reason that we do creative arts therapies for the kids is because it is a nonverbal way to express. Like, I can do an entire session with a child using music. They don't actually have to talk or say 2 words to me. Now, most of our kiddos want to talk because survivors think that the kids don't know as much as the kids know. Right? So when we say, oh, we see as young as 3, oh, well, they don't know anything because they were asleep the whole time. I had a 3-year-old come in and start PALS when I was the PALS coordinator at this time. Came in and told me all about Daddy getting arrested. Mom had no idea. He saw it out the bedroom window. He was supposed to be asleep, but he wasn't. So they see and hear things that they don't, and he had enough verbal skills that he was able to say that to me. Saw him in handcuffs, saw him get put in the cop car, knew there was a gun in the house. Like, Dad used the gun on Mom before. Like, he threatened her with it. The kid saw it. And so, again, like, they see, they know, right? So being able to use creative arts therapies, it's fun, right? And it's about the process of what we're doing. So it's not about being able to sing or being able to play an instrument, but it's about doing those things while we're addressing whatever that is. And the kids program, I mean, abusers often will call us and say, I don't want my kid in PALS. We're not actually talking about them. Their ego's so big and the world revolves around them and they're not doing anything wrong. We're actually just trying to help the child process and healthy emotional expression so that they don't start putting their fist through the wall or through somebody else, right? So we let them, if they bring up the other parent, we let them at their own age, right? 3-year-olds, I'm not saying the word domestic violence with a 3-year-old. I might not even be saying it with a 12-year-old, right? We're just talking about healthy relationships, appropriate communication, healthy expression. We're actually not a threat to the other parent, to the abusive parent.
How does music factor into that?
So kids write their own songs. They play instruments. We actually had a young man that he was very creative. So they don't have to have any creative talent at all, but it's lovely when they come in with it. And you can expound on that. We had one young man that he was writing his own songs, and then when they graduated, they pulled mom in and he sang some of his songs for her, you know, that he did in therapy. When I was working as a music therapist there, I had a young teen man that, teen boys, some of the hardest to connect with, right? For many reasons, teens in general, because they've learned to shut down, they've learned to not trust. I was just there to provide a safe space so that if he felt like he could trust me and he didn't want to do any music, fine. So as a music therapist, I can actually sit in a room and not do any music with them, but I'm still a music therapist doing that. So one day out of the corner of I saw him looking over here because I had a guitar. And I was like, do you want to learn to play? And so I taught him guitar in his session. We didn't talk about anything. I just taught him guitar. I said, what do you want to learn? And he picked it up. He had an aptitude for it. And so he would play, and I don't give homework in therapy. That's not my style. But he would take it home, and he would practice. And so then I would print things out for him, and I would write chords out for him, and I'd say, go learn this chord progression. And he would come back in, and he had it. And so piano is my main instrument, so he would play guitar, and I would accompany him on the piano. So we were doing little duets. Not once were we necessarily talking about what was going on. So after doing that for a couple of months, we were able to talk about Dad. So it's really him learning to trust me in that space, bonding through the music. And yeah, to an outsider, it looked like just straight up guitar lessons, and I've done it with piano too, where I've taught kids piano. They're learning a skill. They feel empowered. Their self-esteem goes up. I can do this. That young man, because I've been there a minute, so he's grown up and he's graduated college at this point, he still uses music. That became a coping strategy for him too, right? Now, it doesn't for everybody, but he had an aptitude for it. He had a natural gift. So he played in his talent show at high school. And when I would see him out, this same young man that didn't even want to look at me in session, he'd be like, hey, Miss Michelle, what's up? I'm going here, I'm doing this. And he bought his own guitar, and he taught himself how to play more at home. Oh, gives me chills. He's one of my success stories. So with all of that horrible stuff that we talk about, there are these success stories. There are survivors that are able to go back to school, to get a degree, to be able to go out and earn money, to provide a house for themselves and their children, to give that safe space for them to grow up in a violence-free home. So that those kids then cannot repeat those patterns and they break that intergenerational cycle of violence. So the court advocates, we also have DV advocates in the DCP&P offices, that's child protection here in New Jersey. So they work out of those offices to help case managers because they might get a call where it's not domestic violence. It's a different issue that comes in, but when the caseworkers start working with that case, they're like, something's a little off. So then our domestic violence liaisons kind of come in and they can help assist and identify that, yeah. I'm gonna get to that. One more, the other piece that we have is a domestic violence response team. So these are all volunteers. It's called DVRT, where they go through a 40-hour training, and they respond to police stations and or hospitals. So if an arrest happens and a victim is down at the police station, the police will ask them, do you want a volunteer to come out? They activate them, and we have someone that does that. So those are all the services. So they just go out and they are there to offer support. So they talk about Providence Health Services, let them know that we exist, are just support, because it's scary being in a police station, right? So yeah, just to offer support so that when they go back in and talk to the cops, they're not offering advice. None of what we're doing is offering advice. It's support. It's options. It's what do you need? So, yeah.
Is this the family you're offering the support to? Or
The victim. The victim.
right, okay.
Yeah, because usually there's no family with them. It's just them and the abuser, and they're in two different places. Whether the abuser gets arrested or not, but yeah, the victim's usually giving a police report, police statement, so they're there just to help them with that. Yeah, that's why they're there. So I mentioned the grant. So a lot of our funding is grant-based, and that doesn't give us a lot of flexibility. They tell us exactly what we're allowed to use that funding on, and it's very specific sometimes, and Barb usually likes to tell the story. We had a grant that told us that we could put new flooring in the safe house, but staff weren't allowed to walk on it. It was only for clients. And I'm not joking, we weren't able to put the floor in because we were like, we all need to like hoverboards down, like literally, and that was the grant specific, it wouldn't be changed. The flooring was only allowed to be used for clients. So that is how specific. So financial funding is one of the biggest things that donations that just come in that allow us to use it for all these other expenses that we have. And I know transportation is one of the barriers that our clients have, and where we are in West Hampton, there's not really public transportation that's safe to get to us. I have a client that gets dropped off at a bus stop and walks 2 miles to get to us, and it's not a safe space to walk. So Uber cards, Lyft cards, transportation cards like that, even Wawa gift cards because gas is so expensive, right? So all of that helps because those are things that I can literally give out to a client. With all the hotels, food, non-perishable food donations that were hotel friendly, that was a big push and things that we needed because feeding 65 people, right? That's a lot, and we go through food a lot. So it's those kinds of things that are helpful to allow us to spend where we need to. Okay, I mentioned what Barb wanted me to mention, so my job is done. Yes?
Do you allow contact information for the abused person? Like maybe she has a mother or somebody she wants to let them know where she is?
Oh yeah, so it's not a prison, right? So it's like they are with us because they need a safe space to stay, but their life is their life. They can come and go. If they have a job, they go to work. The kids are able to go to school. It's actually with DV, because we have one safe house for the entire Burlington County, the kids are able to stay in their home school district if the survivor wants them to. That school district is legally obligated to bus them there. So yeah, they can contact their parents. They just can't stay out overnight because they told us that they're unsafe to do so. So we do have a curfew. There's some rule, but curfew's like midnight. But if they haven't, like some people work third shift, they're allowed to do that. Like, you know, it's not punishment to be there. It's like, we do tell them try not to contact the abuser. The abusers are not allowed to come to the safe house. I mean, it seems obvious, but they're not supposed to reveal the location. That's a safety risk. You put all the other residents and the staff in danger. So there might be a reason that we exit somebody or we move them to another place because it's now unsafe for them to be there. But we try to screen in more than we screen out. We're not trying to not have people come to services. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Where do you get an Uber card? I've never bought them myself, so we get them though. We do get them there.
Well, I wanted everybody to assume how you intend. Okay. I intended to make something that looked like a car in case anybody brought an Uber or a Lyft car, but
if you need to get away, you need a way to get away. So if you would like to contribute, and if we buy cash, you can give it to them to buy a Lyft card if they know how to do it. So that's the purpose of this, which is my attempt to make a car. Oh, instead of leaving it here? Okay. And then you can see up close how wonderful it is. And you can pass it behind you. Yeah.
We'll take any forms of financial donations. Yes.
Medical professionals who maybe do assessments or have to do medical assessments, like on the children or anything, like a nurse practitioner or physician, do you ever need to call one in?
So the question was, do we have medical professionals that we ever need to call in? No, we would refer them out. So it's mostly advocates that work there. We don't have a psychiatrist on staff either, so we would refer them to another Catholic Charities program or another place if they needed to do, to have any type of medical intervention. If they're staying in our safe house, we will help with transportation. We do have 2 vehicles that we can drive clients, but again, 65 clients, that's a lot of people to transport. Yeah.
We would make a check out to
Providence House, yep, Providence House is just fine.
put Uber, Lyft if we want to.
If you want to, yeah, down in the notes section, put Uber, Lyft card. Yes.
Who funds you besides Catholic Charities?
So the question was about our funding. So we get state funding, we get federal funding, we get a lot of grants. Like 75% of our funding is through grants. And so, yeah, they're both state and federal grants telling us that we can only have floors for clients. That was the weirdest one. Most of them, it's regular stuff, like they'll say you can buy, food or whatever, but they won't let us pay mortgage or rent or things like that. So that's usually what they're specific about. Or we can pay salaries, but not other stuff. But so there's 2 other brochures on the table. One is just all of our services that I hopefully went over all of them. And then the other one is just a brochure about restraining orders. I didn't talk about them, I didn't touch on them, but it just answers some basic questions about restraining orders. And then our palm cards that are over there for folks. Someone else over here had a question, yes?
You don't take referrals, like from hospitals or schools?
The question was about referrals, but in what way? Like, so they,
Well, like a nursing, you see something physically abused, you are obligated to report that. And then somebody, and I think the schools are now too.
Yes, like the diapers.
so for us, we are mandated reporters, but domestic violence is not a mandate report. If the child is being physically harmed, yes. If they are being physically or sexually assaulted, yes. But if they are in a home where dad's hurting mom and they're seeing it, that is not a mandate report, or I'm calling on every single person that comes to us. So no, it's not a mandated report in that sense. Again, if the child is being physically harmed themselves, yes, we know it's harmful. The children are being affected. But if I'm making that call, that case gets opened under mom, whether she's the one that it's called about or not. Yeah, systems. There's a lot of systems. There's a lot of problems with systems. DCP&P can do a lot of good. There can be a lot of things that are helpful. But if they call and DV is the only issue and the child isn't being physically harmed, they're not going to do anything, because the kid isn't being physically harmed. So again, we're mandated reporters and we report when we have to, but now I just might have put them in more danger. So again, it doesn't mean that I'm not reporting when I have to, but DV alone, the child just witnessing, is not a mandated report. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm familiar with that name, but I actually, well, I'm familiar with the name, and there actually, the book is called Codependence. Yeah. I mean, that's just a whole nother separate topic too, you know, and there can be codependence in that relationship, but that doesn't create or cause domestic violence. So, but yeah, there's lots of stuff that's floating around out there. Any other questions?
Well, please join me in thanking you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.